Hello class, we're about to start section 8.5 using factoring to solve polynomial equations. Solving by hand using the zero factor property. Zero factor property, if a times b equals 0, then a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0 to make this equation equal 0. Now, we go to how to solve polynomial equations with the zero factor property. First, we will set the equation equal to 0. Then we will write the polynomial in factored form, and then separate the factors, setting each factor equal to 0, and solving will give the solutions. So we'll move down here to 1a. The first thing we notice here is that we need to move the 7x minus 10 over here with the positive x squared, because remember, whatever we have squared must be positive. So we will subtract 7x and add 10. To both sides. So we add x squared minus 7x plus 10, and that will equal 0. Now we need to list our a, b, and c. Our a here would be 1, our b would be negative 7, and our c would be 10. So now we multiply a and c, and that will give us 10. And then we will write out the factors. We will have the factors of 10. It will be 1 and 10, and also 2 and 5. Now, in order for us to multiply and get a positive or add to get a negative, that means both factors must be negative. Now, when we add these factors together, this will give us negative 11. This will give us negative 7. So this matches B, so we will use negative 2 and negative 5. So we will have x squared minus 2x minus 5x plus 10 is equal to 0. Now we group the first two values, we can factor out x, and we will have x minus 2 left. We group the second two factors here, but if you notice, the first of our second two factors is negative, so whatever we factor out must be negative. So we can factor out a negative 5, and that will give us x minus 2. So we will have x minus 2 and x minus 5, and both multiply equals 0. Now we have to separate the two. We have to separate the factors. We have x minus 2 equals 0 and x minus 5 equals 0. So we will add 2 on both sides, and x is 2. We will add 5 on both sides, and x is 5. So these are our answers here. Is x is 2 or x is 5. And that is our final answer for A. Now we go here to B. The first thing we need to do is multiply this x by this parenthesis. So we have x times 3x, which is 3x squared, x times 2, which is 2x, and it equals 8. So we have to subtract 8 on both sides, and we will have 3x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Now we can't factor anything out here, so we will list our a, b, and c. I'm just going to list our a, b, and c here because as you see that this is kind of cramped here. So our a would be 3, our b would be 2, and our c would be negative 8. So we know we would do a times c, which would be 3 times negative 8, which is negative 24. Now what we need to do with this negative 24, which I'll write over here, we need to write all the factors of 24 first. So we have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and also 4 and 6. Now we look at our b here. Our b is positive. So since our b is positive and we have a negative answer here, that means all of the lower numbers will be negative. Okay, so when we add these together, we want a b that equals 2, and we know that will be negative 4 and 6. So we will substitute in for 2x, the negative 4 and positive 6. And then we will factor. 3x squared minus 4x, they have x in common. So it'll be 3x minus 4. 6x minus 8, they have 2 in common. And we add 3x minus 4. And it equals 0. So we add x plus 2 times 3x minus 4. And it equals 0. So what we would do is we would set both of these factors set them equal to 0. So we had x plus 2 equals 0, and then we will have 3x minus 4 equals 0. So we will subtract 2 on both sides, and x is negative 2. That's one answer. We have to add 4 on both sides here, and 3x is equal to 4. Divide each side by 3, and x is 4/3. So our final answer, which I'm going to write here because I have lack of space, is x equals negative 2 or 4/3. That will be our final answer. Now we go down here to C. Now what we need to do here, we need to move everything over here. And remember, the coefficient of the highest exponent must be positive. So we had 2x cubed plus 5x squared. And we know we're going to subtract 8x and subtract 20 on both sides. So it'll be 2x cubed plus 5x squared minus 8x minus 20, and that equals 0. Now, if you notice here, we have 4 factors, so we could group them. We can group the first two. They have an x squared in common, and this will leave 2x plus 5. We group the second two. If you notice, this first term is negative, so what we factor out must be negative. We can factor out a negative 4, and that will leave us 2x plus 5. So we had x squared minus 4 times 2x plus 5, and they both equal 0. Now x squared minus 4 is the difference of two squares. So this would be x minus 2, x plus 2, times 2x plus 5, and that's set equal to 0. So we would take x minus 2 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0, and then 2x plus 5 equals 0. And then we would solve for each one of these. We know this would be 2, this would be negative 2, and then this will end up being a negative 5/2. So these are our answers here. Now we come here to D. Now the first thing I probably would do with D is let's go ahead and subtract 3 on both sides. So we have 1/6 x squared plus 4/3 x plus 2 equals 0. Now we want to get rid of these denominators. We can multiply everything by the common denominator, which would be 6. 6 times 1/6 x squared will give us x squared. 6 times 4/3 x will give us a positive 8x. And 6 times 2 is 12. And they equal 0. Now we could take the factors here. We had x squared plus 8x plus 12. Now we know this will give us x plus 6 and x plus 2. Now if you need to go through the whole process, feel free to do it. You can set your a, b, and c, multiply a and c, and substitute and group and then factor. So now we set x plus 6 equals 0. X plus 6 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. We'll subtract 6 on both sides, and x is negative 6. We'll subtract 2 on both sides, and x is negative 2. So these are our answers here. It's x is negative 6 or x is negative 2. Now we go on to the next page. It says solve the following by hand. Now, if you notice here, we have these values multiplied together, binomial by binomial, and equals 3. So the first thing we need to do is multiply this out like we did earlier, basically in chapter 7. So we know this will give us 8x squared minus 12x minus 2x plus 3 equals 3. So we will have 8x squared minus 14x plus 3 equals 3. Now we will subtract 3 on both sides because we want to make this side equal 0. So we have 8x squared minus 14x equals 0. Now, with 8x squared and 14x, they both have 2x in common. So we can factor out a 2x, and that will give us 4x minus 7 in parentheses. So we will set both of these values equal to 0. And this will give us x equals 0. And here we will add 7 on both sides. We have 4x equals 7. Divide each side by 4. And x is 7/4. So these two are your answers. X is 0. Well, I'll write it down here. X is 0, or x is equal to 7/4. Okay, now we go here to B. B, we basically do the distributive property. 4w times w is 4w squared. 4w times a minus 3 will give us a minus 12w. And it equals w squared plus 4w plus 12. Now, we have to get the w squared. We have to get all of these values on one side. But remember, our w squared must be positive. So we could subtract w squared minus 4w and also minus 12 on both sides. So now this will leave us 3w squared minus 16w minus 12, and that will equal 0. Now they have nothing in common here, so we could list our A, B, and C. A is 3, B is negative 16, and C is negative 12. Now when we multiply our A and C, it will give us negative 36. So now we want to write out the factors of 36. We will have 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, and then 6 and 6. These are the factors of 36. Now if you notice here, it's a negative 36, and our B is negative. So that means all of your higher numbers will be negative. Now when we add these together, we want to get negative 16. The ones that give us negative 16 is this 2 and negative 18. So we will replace the negative 16w with a positive 2w minus 18w minus 12 equals 0. So we group the first two values. We can factor out a w. We add 3w plus 2. We group the second two values here. We can factor out a negative 6. And we add 3w plus 2. And it equals 0. Okay, now if you notice, these two parentheses are the same. So you'll write down one of them. And then everything on the outside you will write down. So we add w minus 6 equals 0. Now we set both of these parentheses equal to 0. So we add 3w plus 2 equals 0. And w minus 6 equals 0. So we'll subtract 2 on both sides. So we add 3w equals negative 2. And then divide each side by 3. So w is equal to a negative 2/3. Now we come here, we will add 6 on both sides. And w is equal to 6. So our final answer is w is equal to negative 2/3 or w is equal to 6. And that is your final answers. Now it says solve polynomials by graphing. We have already seen that we could solve any equation using a calculator graph by graphing both sides of the equation and finding the intersection. So basically this is how this will go. You would take out your graphing calculator, either your TI-83 or TI-84 plus. And what you would do is first we will multiply these values here. This will give us 8x squared minus 12x minus 2x plus 3, that equals 3. So this would be 8x squared minus 14x plus 3 equals 3. So we will put this in our graphing calculator. This would be y1, and 3 would be y2. And then what you would do when you would see your graph, which I would draw here off to the side, because they asked for a sketch, it would be somewhat like this here. And then 3 would be up here. So here, if you notice, it would intersect at x equals 0. So actually, I need to take this down to be more representative of this. We would do, let's see, about here. So it would be x equals 0, and x would be about 1.75.